Good morning and welcome to Parent-Teen Connection. My name is Rachel Eastop. I'm a counselling psychotherapist. This is my son, Sam Eastop, and our cat, Milo Eastop. He's about 4 months old, our wee kitten Milo. So Sam is an actor, a singer. He's in a band. He used to work at the Edinburgh Dungeon. At the moment, he's furloughed and is turning night into day, frankly. What time did you get to bed last night?
About 3.
About 3.
Yeah.
Struggling to hear
Kind of
you.
a standard thing for me, really. 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Yeah, don't really know why.
Is that why you look like a half-shut knife at the
Shut
minute?
up. I look fresh as a daisy.
Right. Wow.
I do.
Okay. Yeah, you do. You look grand, Alan. You look grand.
Leave my wire alone. Stop it.
So today we're continuing our series of Angels and Demons. For those of you who tuned in last week, you will know that we had a caller who had a particular kind of interest in our series. Whether we didn't ask him whether he came across our show by accident or whether he tuned in on purpose, but he had a story that would fit our kind of demons category in his own life with his own family. And we felt because of that, and we promised him that we would discuss that particular case today. But we do so, as we do with all of these cases, very delicately and very mindful that these are real people with real people's lives, and nightmares actually for families involved. And we also, as a contrast to that, have a story about a teenager that's done something incredible. So this, just to fill you in for those of you who may be just joining us and don't know the series, our Angels and Demons series, we wanted to capture kind of examples of when young people do something horrific, but also may do something heroic. And we wanted to just share the two extremes it doesn't just teenagers, it happens in life. But because this show is about Parent-Teen Connection and we're looking mostly at the lives of young people and teenagers, it was just, we felt it was a series that might keep us going over the winter. I don't know how many of you have been affected by snow. We're based in Dunfermline in Scotland, and we had snow, probably a week ago? I can't even remember, and it's not gone away. It's just frozen there. Horrible frost, not horrible frost. Frost is beautiful, but it's treacherous probably. So if you're out and about, why? Stay at home, protect the NHS. That includes the A&E department. But if you are having to be out and about, whether it's just for a walk, walking the dog, going for a walk, exercise, or out in the car, please be careful while you're there. We don't want anyone to have any accidents. Okay, so Sam, how have you been this week? What's been going on in your exciting life?
Thank you. Yeah, I've been fine. Just kind of meandering through at this point, really. I've just been talking to some of my mates about this situation because they're all kind of relatively the same age as me. And I was just checking up on them because I know it's, kind of what you should do in this situation, just kind of message your mates and stuff. And yeah, they're all kind of saying the same thing as me, just like the days are just like flying by. You don't really...
You've frozen.
know what date it is anymore. When we said days. Oh no, my connection. Hello?
Hello? You froze then. You're back.
You can see me now? Okay, cool. I wasn't frozen my screen, then I had a little circle and then I came back. Oh. Anyway, but my mates some of them have jobs, and they're saying that like even they just like live the days that they have work. So they just like the days they have work are like okay days, and they're like fine with those days. And then are they like know what days that is? They kind of have like something to base their week around. And then every day they're not working. One of them was like, I just hate the days I'm not in work or working, not in work because they work from home, but they just hate when they're not working because they don't really know what to do themselves. And I'm just like, yeah, I get that because I'm not even working at all at the minute. So I'm one of those guys that doesn't really mind like just having all the time off. So it didn't really affect my psyche that much, but like, I don't know, I can get, I guess, bored or just like wanting to go out and about, but then you know, like everyone, you want to go out with your mates or whatever and just do stuff, but you can't.
Yes.
So then this is why like things like this, like Zoom, are really good. We just had that Robert Burns night thing on Saturday that was just like connected with people in a, you know, certain way over Zoom.
Yeah, so, we should maybe talk about that. So just to pick up on what you said, which I think is really important, is that, yeah, I think loads of people say, oh, I hate my job, don't want to go to work, hate school, don't want to go to school. But now, in a sense, we're not able to go to work or go to school, although we still have to work and learn. Is actually, everyone's like, do you know what, I'll take it back. Because there's not an alternative to that. The alternative is nothing. And actually, never before did we say, I don't want to go to school, because I mean, some teenagers are, like you say, quite happy to be at home doing nothing. But actually, in the main, what they mean is, I want the freedom to do what I want to do. And that usually involves going out with your friends, having an interest, going on holiday, going out, socializing. Can't do any of that. So it's, you know, we're all a bit fed up. We're bored. And that wasn't what we meant. So yeah, you're right, is that staying connected is really important. Checking in, checking out is really crucial. And your friend,
I'm coming up for my second birthday in lockdown as well. Like it's still May, but it's probably gonna happen, isn't it? Let's be real. So yeah, it's upsetting, to say the least. So because of like the time of when you know the lockdown happened was like right before my birthday, pretty much. So. And I was like, oh, maybe it won't be in lockdown. How naive was that?
I know.
21st was going to be in lockdown. It was.
Yeah, we'll be over it by then. Yeah, you've had your whole 21st year on this planet.
Entire 21st year, yeah.
Just in the house, not being able to do anything really. And that's pretty rubbish.
Yeah.
More than rubbish. I'm heart sorry for you, mate. I really am. We just keep praying that this vaccine we'll get enough of it, that it'll be rolled out speedily, and we'll all get, everyone who needs it will get it. And the gap that's being left between is okay, and that we can immunize as many people as possible.
But like we said before in the past, like, you know, yes, you can go, boohoo, you had your 21st, you know, and lockdown, people are dying, and that's so true. But we've also stated in this podcast that we're all allowed, and, you know, to feel these certain things, and that our feelings are valid no matter what, because we're all in the same situation. So even though we're all experiencing very different situations, you know, I know I'm very lucky compared to a lot of people in these situations anyway. So I felt like I had to stress that after moaning about my life and existence. So
yeah, absolutely. I just want to point out this fabulous bit of artwork going on behind our screens.
I know, look at it, so cool.
We didn't design this was a fabulous Paul. So we've got this kind of teal, which I love, by the way, kind of wooden thing that and then this beautiful sort of purple and teal are classically good colors to go together. And then we've got our new sort of parent teen connection logo there. Nice work, loving it. Yeah.
I just love purple.
Reverse to where we see
I know,
ourselves.
yeah, I know.
Adorable.
Anything purple, I don't know what it is. I recently realized anything purple my eye is really attracted to. So I see purple and I'm like, oh, purple. Like, you know the Instagram logo? It's purple on your phone. Like, it's like that little, like, it's a square because they're all squares, but it has like little squares and circles, and it's like kind of it used to be just purple, I think, and then they changed like purple and it changes color a little bit. Like, my eye always like attracts to Instagram, and I like I find myself going to Instagram all the time. I'm like, why am I going to Instagram all the time? I don't really care about it, but like my eye is like purple, so that's quite interesting. And I just love
purple at the minute.
Yeah, I think it's great. There's definitely science behind that. Like, that's why people like make their apps massively colorful and stuff and attractive, because they'll make you click on it more and like use it, and then they get to sell ads more. Fascinating.
Indeed. There's something subliminal about all that.
100%.
So we just want to welcome our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. We want to say hi to Mandy Louise Paul. Says hiya.
Hello.
Hey, welcome. And also April Musson. Welcome, April. She says, it doesn't make your feelings any less valid, Sam. I feel for the younger peeps. Yeah, I know. I'm with you on that, April. Yeah. Okay, so The second thing we were going to talk about was, so we had a virtual Scots night. It was a sort of nod to Burns, Rabbie Burns, and it was so it was all on Zoom. There was 250 people on this Zoom call.
I think it was 260 actually.
260.
Yeah, it was like 260 or 70 or something like that. Yeah, there was loads of people in it.
Cool. And so there was 260 people, and we were encouraged to dress up, and there was quizzes and people doing, turns and whatever,
comedic and segments and stuff.
Yeah, segments, and then we had a break of about an hour where we then went into a breakout room with the people that we'd invited, and we all shared a meal together, and then we came out the breakout, which was really good, and then we had quizzes and things. So it was laid on by a local group of guys called Like Minds, and they raise money every year. I don't know what the total was, but it'll be in the thousands.
I think it was about £4,600 they raised.
Awesome. So we raised £4,600.
For something just local to Fife was like really impressive. That was a really good amount.
Well, there were people all over the world thinking in. And it was so good that it happened. It's probably more people than would have been at the physical event that normally happens.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's remarkable. And they're going to donate the money to local mental health charities. I haven't decided which ones yet. I've put in a few suggestions, and so I'm really pleased. Fantastic, great work. It was a lovely evening.
Yeah, it was a great night, and it was like they did like a really cool raffle where they had like 5 prizes donated from really cool companies and stuff, and they were just like starting all on like £50 or £150 and stuff. And some things went for mad money. There was like a huge canvas. It probably would have been like from on the wall behind me from about here to about here. That's how big the canvas was, and it was like of one of these Highland coups, wasn't it? If people know what I'm talking about, the one where he paints the strands and it looks like really colourful. That was one of them, like huge. It was like 50 by 50 inches. It was mad, or even more than that actually. And it was just like that went for like 200, 300 quid or something like that.
Yeah,
which is awesome. But online you can get that for like 200 quid or 199 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it went for more, but it's for charity, so it's good. So it went for even more.
For charity. Yep.
It was a good night.
So we also have a hello from Sam Richardson. Hello, Sam. How are you? Another Sam.
No.
Okay. So are we going to delve into our wee stories this morning?
Yeah, we can if you like.
Okay. So which one are we going to start with?
Let's go with the kind of local story of
okay.
Alesha MacPhail, that we were kind of brought to our attention last week by the grandfather of the victim, unfortunately, who joined into our call. So this one is about the demons aspect of the angel and demon thing, and we actually, I don't think either of us were actually aware of this. Were we aware of this when he came on?
Well,
it didn't ring the bells for me at all. Somehow I'd never heard of this. I don't know how, but I think
I've definitely heard of it after you told me the story.
Right.
Yeah. So.
This is the Wikipedia site about this. Now you may be like, "Oh, Wikipedia's Wikipedia," but like Wikipedia is also like full of information and facts as well. So, and I double checked it, so I think this is correct. So this one is about the murder of Alesha MacPhail. This was quite local to us in Scotland. And on the 2nd of July 2018, 6-year-old Scottish girl Alesha MacPhail was abducted from her bed and murdered by 16-year-old Aaron Campbell. Alesha from Airdrie, North Lanarkshire, was 3 days into a stay with her grandparents on the Isle of Bute when Campbell entered their unlocked home at approximately 2 a.m. The teenager had previously bought cannabis from Alesha's father, Robert, who lived in the house, and initially went to steal the drug. Upon finding the child asleep, Campbell picked her up, carried her to an abandoned hotel, then raped and killed her by applying pressure to her face and neck. Alesha was reported missing at 6:23 a.m. and her body was discovered by a member of the public at 8:54 a.m. So that's a horrific, opening to that story. What I find slightly remarkable about that story is that she was reported missing, then found within 2.5 hours. So there was obviously like a really good. It's probably quite a small island, but there's also like probably quite a good effort put in by the public because she was found by a member of the public. So they probably all went and just searched for her, which is probably another heroic thing to focus on in this horrific story. Police Scotland charged Campbell with abduction, rape, and murder on the 5th of July 2018. The teenager denied any involvement and pleaded not guilty when his trial began on 11th of February 2019. He logged a special defence of incrimination, that's in quotation marks, by claiming that Robert MacPhail's girlfriend, Toni McLaughlin, was responsible for murdering the child and framing him. Campbell was tied to the crime by CCTV footage, DNA, and fibres from his clothing, and the jury returned a guilty verdict after 3 hours of deliberation. A ban on publicly naming Campbell was lifted following his conviction, so that's why we know his name and I can say it now. On the 21st of March 2019, he was handed a life sentence with a minimum of 27 years, subsequently reduced to 24 years on appeal. He confessed to the crime before his sentencing, adding that he was quite satisfied with the murder. That's what he said about it. He said he was quite satisfied with the murder. Now, he was only sentenced to 27 years initially, and then it was reduced to 24.
Yeah.
Reduced to 24.
Yeah.
To me, that doesn't sound right.
Okay.
Last bit here. The case generated a large amount of media interest in the United Kingdom, which is why I was very surprised that I didn't hear about it, with the presiding judge, Lord Matthews, stating that he could not think of a crime in recent times that has attracted such revulsion. The perceived safety of the Isle of Bute contributed to the public's shock, while the young age of the culprit prompted discussion and debate around the nature of underage murderers, which is kind of what this is about, this whole segment, I guess. So,
yes, I think the first thing that strikes me is the Isle of Bute. So, island life is very different from mainland life in that the residents of islands tend to know each other. It's a big community feel, and there's a safety element. There's a safety element there. So people do tend to leave their doors unlocked. Crime is generally quite low, things like that. So I can understand why, when we mainlanders hear about, leaving your doors unlocked, it's a kind of, well, that was just silly, but actually it's the done thing when you live on an island. The second thing was that the sickening part of this for Alesha's dad was that the person that murdered his daughter was known to him, and was known to him via
illegal drugs,
an unpleasant thing.
Now, if any of that is true, right? Because I'm assuming that is all fact. That that is kind of almost preventable. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I was going to go on to say, I was going to go on to say, Sam, that we want to link drugs and violence together, but if he was cannabis use doesn't usually link with a rapist and murderer.
It doesn't.
It doesn't the two don't. So, I wonder whether actually there's a predisposition. There's something about this particular individual.
Oh no, there definitely is. He said that quote. That makes me think definitely something wrong with him.
Yeah,
however, I don't think
people that leave these quotes about sinister.
Yeah. No, it's almost like they want that that reputation that those killers in the 70s and that had of the Ripper and the Chesapeake, whatever he was, Chesapeake Ripper, I can't remember what they called him, that guy in America, but the Zodiac. There's these names, and they have this reputation of saying stuff, and they're kind of famously quoted and that, and then people like us advertise the quotes that they say. But I guess they kind of want that something, I don't know, something in their mentally ill brain makes them think that they should get fame from this or something. I don't really know. It's just. I like the fact he said that he said he took great pleasure in the murder or something like that, or found it. He's quite satisfied with the murder. Is it quite satisfied? It almost sounds like a horribly posh, horrific villain in a Bond film or something. What? Who says that?
Yeah.
It just sounds really weird.
Says that at 16, and of course, the thing that I suppose we find so difficult to wrap our heads around is children hurting children, or children taking another child's life. And a 6-year-old little girl, it's not even, there are no words for that, how devastated the family will have been and are still, no doubt. But also it's kind of what's I have to wonder what the story for the perpetrator, the 16-year-old boy, what's been his life. He's already taking drugs. Is there a backstory? Is there a whole thing? He'll be how old will he be? 30, 40 before he gets out of that's certainly his young life gone. But what will he be as a result? He'll be institutionalized. He'll be what kind of human being would we be letting out into the world? So yes, I think it's one of these things where we could say, we don't know enough about his story, his backstory. And that for me is the not the interesting thing, but I think the crucial thing as well is that things don't happen in a vacuum. There's often a backstory in terms of, was he subjected to abuse? Was there any kind of neglect? What was his family life like as well? And now his life is ruined, and he's ruined the lives of other people as well. He's got a girlfriend in the mix. There's a whole kind of further story, I should imagine. I don't know if the gentleman that spoke to us last week has joined the program this time. If anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment, please do so. Becky Campbell has said, nowhere near long enough for the crime.
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Does the punishment fit the crime? And I think this is what we look at when we look at the differences between countries. And when you go to America, there's death penalties in the mix. When you're in this country, there's life, but what does life mean? There's a whole huge debate which we don't want to get into necessarily, but just a massive kind of inconsistency, I suppose, and whether we feel that the punishment fits the crime. And often sentencing, there's an element of factors that are put into place that have nothing to do with emotions or what's right and wrong. It's to do with the type of thing he's been found guilty for, the age, all kinds of things that maybe will have factored into that.
The age must have factored into that. Like if he was 18, I assume it would have been a lot longer than that. But there's only 2 years difference.
Pretty long sentence for a 16. Yeah,
it is. But it's not long enough for the crime, is it really?
And then, of course, we know how sex offenders, paedophiles, people who take the lives of children are treated in prison. So that's an added punishment in a sense.
Yeah, unless they put them in some sort of isolation or something. Or,
and what does that do to you if you're in your solitary confinement? So, this person is not going to necessarily come out of prison being a model citizen ready to, contribute to society. Maybe they may be more broken or, So, okay. Anything you want to say on that?
There was. Now I've forgotten it. Hang on, bear with me.
Okay. Shall I fill the gap while you're thinking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then it's difficult to chime in, so because then I'm like, oh, wait till she's finished, and then it goes.
Right. Jamie McLean has put, we debated in school once. He committed this crime at 16. He won't be out until he's 40. So has his life been wasted? If anyone interviewing him, if anyone interviewing him looks him up, are his chances at a job ruined? Yes. So great one. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, this is what I'm saying, is that, an individual like that, when they come out of prison, is that your past will follow you around forever. So, what sort of life are they going to, I'm not saying that necessarily from a poor him point of view, but in a sense, it's somewhere along the lines, if this individual is either bad, twisted, evil person, or they've had a terrible injustice passed upon them throughout their childhood that has then led to this crime that will then make them, at 40, possibly somebody whose life is essentially over, But then it could be argued, well, good, because you took the life of a little girl.
Yeah.
So actually,
he now has no life.
And showed no remorse for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his entire young life is gone, but he's actually lived his young life, whereas the 6-year-old girl hasn't lived any of it. She only lived 6 years of it, whereas he's lived 16. And it's he deserves to get all of that, in my opinion, all of that life taken away from him, because he just doesn't deserve it. And like Jamie said, what is he going to do when he comes out? Nobody's going to hire that guy if they know who he is. Nobody. Unless there's that thing that you see in programs where he changes identity completely, his name and moves abroad or something. I don't know.
Yes, that's the only other thing to do is have a change of identity. But also, they were saying that that some people that come out of prison end up becoming self-employed rather than going into employment because of that, because of the reputation, because employers look you up, and because you often have to declare when you fill out a job application if you've had a criminal record, and there's PVGs and all of those kinds of things that we carry out now. So and then what employment do they do? They'll be taxi drivers, plumbers, not to say that taxi drivers and plumbers are made up of ex-offenders by any means, but what I mean is that as a society we leave them very little option, so actually there's a whole kind of other layer to this as well.
It's you might as well just stay in prison. Do you know what I mean? If he's not going to actually get out and be able to get a job or anything, if that's the case, then he might as well stay in prison, because you're not going to be able to contribute anything to society, which is the whole point of sending them out of prison. So I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. I remember what I was going to say briefly. Okay. It was about the cannabis thing where you were like, oh, nothing's ever bad has come from selling someone cannabis. Not true. Absolutely not true.
No,
but it wasn't nothing bad. It's just you said murder isn't necessarily associated with it. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But as long as a drug, no matter how, big or small or effective or bad it is, whether it's cannabis or cocaine or heroin or whatever, no matter if it's illegal, it's always going to, inherit some sort of violence or something around it. Especially in the selling of it and the distribution, because there's we saw a thing on the news ages ago that I remember because it was a big story at the time. But there was this guy, and the authorities did a huge drug bust of this cannabis farm or something in Britain. It was in somewhere I don't think it was this place, but somewhere like Brentford. It was just somewhere in England, and you're like, what hell? They bust it. And there was this guy working there who was clearly a slave. He was clearly just employed by these cartels or whatever, and he was not getting paid, horrific conditions, basically about dying. He was the one was keeping the farm going. And so as long as these drugs are illegal, stuff will bad people will always kind of be connected to it. You wouldn't get that over alcohol, do you know what I mean? Because it's legal. So
yeah, but people murder people who are drunk. I'm drunk people.
Yeah. True. That's true. But there's evidence to suggest that if you make something like that legal, or you don't engage in the legal activity of these things, then you're probably less likely to attract people who are not saying that the father caused this because of selling. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But just if you're involved in that kind of stuff, something could happen. Because there's was it Portugal? Is it a country that did this? They legalized some of the drugs, or all of the drugs, and overdoses went down, crime went down, addictions went down, because everyone was having it prescribed, or not prescribed, but in medical doses, and they were analyzing it, because it was legal, they were selling it, and it was instead of just taking here's loads of heroin, it was here's this amount of heroin or whatever, and everyone was just yeah, cool, rather than dying or fighting for it or killing each other over it and stuff like that. So that was actually a really incredible experiment done by Portugal, and I'm not saying that we should legalize every drug. I'm just saying that there's just factors to take into account when you look at that stuff.
I think there's also other factors at play here. It's not necessarily the drug per se, it's everything around that. For example, addiction, or the reason that people take drugs in the first place. So you might have somebody who is using drugs or taking drugs from a recreational point of view. There are other people for whom their life becomes absolutely dependent upon it because of addiction. There are others that are maybe taking the drugs because of how it makes them feel, as opposed to how they feel without it. So for somebody who has had a horrible, traumatic, abusive childhood, to be numbed by a drug and not think and not remember and not experience the pain of that is preferable. So there's also, what goes into drugs. They're not possibly as pure as they
That's
should
another
be.
thing. There's another thing that's another fact I should have said. Sorry, was when they made them legal, they were like not good, but they were like clean rather than like horrifically made stuff. Like, weren't people making? Someone was just like a thing that was in the story in the news was like there's cocaine or something going around that had like bleach in it or something. Like, it was made really cheaply and horrifically, and it was really bad for you, like really bad for you. And but like if you make it like legal and medically or professionally done, it's like kind of a lot better standard and quality. So like it's a little less dangerous, I think. But I think why the deaths went down as well. They were like it was like
you weigh up that if you're putting washing powder or other things, mixing them with the drug, or that there's all horrific, as you say, bleach, all kinds of things that are put into drugs to dilute them down, make them last, make them go around, make more money, blah blah blah, the whole thing. Yes, so there's a whole kind of nasty underbelly, as we know, people who are manipulated and coerced into working for those that are selling and making and providing drugs. And it's a whole world that's we can talk about for weeks and weeks and weeks. But and actually, yes. So you're saying that, and there is some evidence to suggest that legalizing elements of certain drugs. We talk about drugs. I mean, caffeine's a drug.
Exactly.
Tobacco's a drug.
Some things are like
a drug. Some drugs that are legal and some drugs that are not legal. And caffeine, tobacco, and alcohol are all addictive. And I think sugar. It's in the hands of the person that's addicted, sugar. That and the reasons for that. And I think that's a huge element of it. That even if things are legalized, there's going to be reasons why people need to have drugs in their lives. And there's
just like loads of questions about it, isn't there? Like, my question is not because I'm a massive stoner, but like, why isn't cannabis legal in Britain? It's legal in so many states in the US. It's getting proven every week there's something else that is medically good for. Every other week there's something. Cannabis is good for this, cannabis is good for that. It's just like, why is it still legal?
That there are elements of cannabis, as there are with lots of, if you look at the plant world, if you look at homeopathic kind of remedies, we can draw from nature poison, we can draw from nature healing properties. So there's an art form and there's a science to this sort of thing, and there's probably elements of the cannabis plant that are both good and bad, and we've identified that.
There's research about it, which is good.
Yeah, but there's also research about the teenage brain, and I've told you this before. Is that sorry, I didn't mean that to sound like I've told you this before, but I've spoken about this before. No, I know you told me. Is that the teenage brain is developing and changing dynamically and exponentially through the years of age 12 to 25. And the impact that something like cannabis has on that brain development, which is essential and is crucial and is almost wonderful in many ways. So the impact of drugs on that is negative. So, the very people that want to be taking things like cannabis tend to be teenagers and young people, because they say the things that you say. And some of these things are true. Let's face it. If you're a teenager with anxiety and you can take cannabis and it relieves your anxiety, I can see why you'd put two and two together and think, this is actually beneficial to me, because how is an anti-anxiety medication any better for me than this? Now, the reality is that GPs tend to avoid prescribing antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication to teenagers because of the changes and puberty and all the things that go along with that. And also, we need to learn to self-regulate. We need to learn to regulate our emotions. If we take something to make us feel better, and we always do that, if we change something if we take something to change our mood, we don't learn to regulate our mood ourselves. Does that make sense? So if you're feeling anxious, what will you do about that anxiety? There's lots of things you can do to help with anxiety, to help with depression. And if you have the one go-to thing that you think fixes it, then for you that you've learned a dependency on that thing. So there's a huge amount of factors in play around taking drugs. What's in drugs, what's healthy in drugs, what's good for you, what's bad. But also it's the user, I think, that is the main factor. The person that's taking them and why they're doing it.
But then there's like the thing you mentioned about the effects of cannabis on the brain, because I remember you talking about that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really important. But what does alcohol do to that? Because I know that kids in Scotland start drinking from like as early as 10. So that's what people were doing. People in my school will be like, oh yeah, I'm still drinking tonight, and it's like, wait, I was in primary school. Like what? Like, do you know what I mean? Like people do it from 10 in Scotland. So what does that have effect on the brain? Because that's a legal drug. I guess you can't have it at that age, but people still do.
But it's illegal at that age.
Yeah, people still do.
That's the thing, is there's very little that's foolproof, isn't there? We have laws in place, but that doesn't mean that people are going to keep those laws. Yeah. The law is that you shouldn't be taking alcohol until you're 18.
Yeah.
Drinking alcohol, and there's a reason for that in people's minds. But I think that, having the things in moderation, we know that in other countries, in our house, we've let you have a drink when you're under 18 in the house, but we didn't let you get smashed out of your brain. We've just allowed you to experience alcohol, maybe with a meal at Christmas.
By that, you mean a Bailey's on New Year's from when I was like 15.
A shandy. And we did the same. And actually, there's, that's not going to cause brain damage, is it? It's consuming.
Well, then there's the argument of if your brain's developing until 25, you can drink from 18. Indeed, so you have that 5-6 years of.
So how would we all feel? How would you feel? Right, 21.
About 25 age, absolutely not.
And then the government saying, actually, we're going to make 25.
Listen, I can't even imagine living in America and it being 21. I've been drinking legally for 3 years of my life, and for like 1 or 2 years longer than that normally. And like it is, I can't imagine. Like I feel like I've drank my fill already of alcohol, and I've done it in the years before I would have been legally be able to do it in America. Which is why, like, you see so many like memes of people in America being like, I'm getting smashed tonight and having like 3 glasses of wine, and like in Britain it's like, sorry, we have to have a liter of this and like 6 cans of this and a whole bottle of vodka to get smashed, because like we just drink from younger ages. But yeah, I think it's a bit weird to leave it to 21, but at the same time I kind of understand why you do it. I'm just glad they don't do it here. Do you know what I mean? Because yeah, I'd be a bit annoyed if I couldn't go out and drink with my mates, because that's just really weird. I couldn't imagine being 18 and going out and being like, I'll have Coke, please. Do you know what I mean? Just no, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. So weird. Also, everyone thinks young because they get these fake IDs and they can pass for 18. But if they did that, then they wouldn't. They'd be like, wait, are you 21 though? In America, do you know what I mean? Where there's like 14-year-olds doing that, looking 18, they wouldn't pass for 21 probably. So that's another good thing, I guess, about the 21-year drinking age. But I don't know, it swings around about.
The reality is that we are. I don't know if it's just us as a nation or human beings, but when we're told we can't do something, we want to do it all the more.
So true.
So, even if they raised the drinking level to 25, there'd still be underage drinkers drinking excessively. Oh, yeah. I mean, when you can legally drink, in other better times, you can go to a pub or a restaurant, or even in the house, have something to drink, have a drink, But as a teenager, when it's illegal, you have to gather, in a very kind of clandestine way in a park or or the woods or down by the beach, and do you know what I mean? And and everyone brings something, and it's just terrific.
An empty is the best one, because you're in a safe environment, a familiar environment with alcohol aplenty, because there'll be a cabinet somewhere.
That's nice for the young people, but not so nice for the parents who've gone abroad on holiday.
I never had an empty and drank your alcohol that much.
No, but I know.
I just drank alcohol you didn't like.
It's the throwing up and the spilling of.
It wasn't on the carpet.
And all the other things that's not pleasant.
Also, I saw somewhere recently that there was people calling for the drinking age in Britain to be lowered to 16, because they'd done some sort of research that meant that it was like it wasn't just because they wanted to drink early, it was because like it was for a reason. I think it was something to do with, maybe it was like they found it would maybe be less addictive if they start drinking earlier or something like that. But I think it just opened doors to be like maybe 6. Maybe we could trial it at 16 for a couple of years, something like that. And they were just, I was like, oh, maybe that's a good idea, but I don't really know if it's a good idea or not. Because in Britain, you can have a drink at 16 with a meal, right, out in public. Like if you're with your parents and you're having a meal, you can have a beer at 16. Because I remember I was like working at Baxter's and there's like cafe thing, and I went up to a guy. It was a woman who was like maybe your age, and a boy who was maybe looked about 17, maybe 16. And I went, what can I get you? Blah, blah, food. Yeah, great. Wine, yeah, and I'll have a beer. Brilliant. I walked away and I went back, went, hang on, wait a minute. And I was like, you look really young. And I went and I was like, I didn't ask that guy for ID to my manager. And they're like, well, just go and ask them then. I was like, okay, sorry, I forgot to like ask you for ID. And he gave me it, and it was 16. And I went, thank you. That's absolutely no help to me, because I was like, you've just proven you're not old enough to drink. I went back and I was like, he's 16. And she was like, well, you can have a drink with a meal. I was like, what? I didn't know this rule was a thing. And I was 17 at the time, I think, or something. So I was like, what? And I was like, I'm going to have a beer with my lunch. And she was like, no, you're not. You're still a shift. I was like, fair point. Yeah. I didn't know this rule existed. And I went back and I was like, okay, there's your innocent gun. You person younger than me having a beer. It was really bizarre. But yeah, I learned that kind of the hard way, I guess. Mid-shift, working, selling alcohol. And then I went to work at a different job, and they were like, oh, don't you know that the cutoff for alcohol is 10 p.m? I was like, no. I've never been restricted before. Yeah.
I hate that one. Anyway, Becky Campbell has come back with some more useful information. In France and Spain, she would know this, it's very common to drink young and have a glass of wine with dinner every night from a young age. And they definitely view alcohol very differently. If you're allowed to do it, it takes away the rebellion and it's less fun. Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they could... there's swings and roundabouts, isn't there? Yeah. If a 16-year-old thought that it was not illegal and that they could drink, would that make them drink any less or be any less responsible?
Yeah. It's that rebellion thing, isn't it? When you grow up, you kind of told not to do, and you have that, some teens have that thing where they rebel against their parents because they're getting told what to do. If you're not told, if you're like from a young age not told to not drink, you know, if that makes sense, double negative, then it kind of takes away the thing to be like, I'm going to drink. You know what I mean? Like, I think it takes that away, which is the thing. What comes back to the thing I think I was talking about, and I think it's Portugal, where they kind of made everything quite like legal and available, which made it less kind of like, I'm going to do drugs. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, oh, there's just drugs there. And it's kind of like done. So that's what I think, like, again, I'm not saying we should do that. Just like, that was really cool how that way, like they were like, because they had the worst drug problem in like Europe or something, like Lisbon or something like that. Everyone was like, ban all the drugs, because they were like, make them all legal, and then it just went down, and it was like everyone was like, what? Yeah.
Do you know what? In the Cadbury's factory, and it's probably the same with all chocolate and sweet factories, but in the Cadbury's factory, when you're an employee, you're allowed to eat as much chocolate as you want, free. Yeah. Your entire shift, no one stops you, and you eat. So when somebody look at you, you're all dreamy.
Sorry, what? Cool.
So you imagine you start a job in Cadbury's, right? And your first month, you're sick with you just eating your body weight in fat in chocolate.
In fat,
in chocolate. What happens 99% of the time is that people cannot stand the look of chocolate after that. They're like, do you know what?
The smell of it, and the smell of it when it's been made, you're like, like you walk around like, and that's a friend of mine. That happened with McDonald's. I don't know if they got free meals. I assume they did get free food there, but every day she would eat a McDonald's lunch, you know, for her lunch and shift. And every single day, and she worked her ass off. She worked there all the time. She worked there for years and years. And she was like, I fucking hate McDonald's now, because she just had it every single day. And I was like, how dare you, like that? And she was like, I have it every day for lunch. And I was like, that's a fair point. Yeah, maybe.
You'd get a bit bored.
Even I would hate McDonald's after that. Yeah. Every day. Oh, no, absolutely not.
Although I get the feeling, Sam, that you would defy all of these rules.
Well, if they kept up with what they do now, where they add something new to the menu every so often, that'd be fine. The winter menu comes around, oh, lovely. You know, just change it up a little bit. But yeah. especially if you get the same thing every single time for, because you'd like something, which I would probably do if you really hate it, or you just have to like change up and like get something completely different every single day. So yeah,
we've completely digressed here, haven't we?
I know. That's the pleasures of podcast. You can go wherever you want. Let's do a U-turn back to our theme of the angels and demons. We're on to the angels now.
Well, can I just finish off our demons bit, because
yeah. I thought we weren't finished.
No, I just want to say, it hasn't escaped us that there has been a murder in our country in, I think it's Birmingham.
Oh yeah, of course.
This last week.
Yeah.
So, even in this current climate, things are still going on, and we didn't talk about it today because we wanted to talk about Alesha, and but we will next week.
Yeah, and I think to hear about these things and talk about them in a week in advance, don't we? So until next week.
But also, I think it's really worth pointing out that there's probably quite a few million teenagers and young people and children, millions and millions of them in this country, and a very, very small amount commit horrors like that. Thank goodness. Yep. These are few and far between, these types of people, but when they it's when something like that happens, a story that we've just heard about Alesha, it's absolutely horrific, and it's something that I don't know if you could ever come back from as a parent, as even as a grandparent. And I know that one of the our viewers had said we focus on the perpetrator and not the victim and the family, and you just want to have dwell on it too much, but to think about that little girl, although it was only 2 hours, and mercifully in many ways it was a very short period of time, but she will have been very frightened and very scared. And that was a really the longest 2 hours ever, when you're in that situation and so young and not really knowing what to do or what's happening or how to stop it or how to get help, so powerless, and so confused and so frightened. So and what I do know is that there are lots of children up and down the country right now today who are feeling scared, terrified, powerless, alone, at the mercy of an adult or somebody bigger and more powerful than they are. And so it's really, really important that we are, lots of things can happen behind closed doors because we're all behind closed doors at the moment. And I guess all I can say is that, be mindful and watchful of the children in your neighborhood, and, look out for them and make sure that you'll just pick up on any changes or any signs that something sinister might be going on. And, there's lots of child protection issues, abuse cases, domestic violence cases that are, things are on the rise at the moment. And that's really concerning and worrying. So, yes. So I don't want to put a downer on that, but I wanted to just say we're really thinking about the family of this little girl, Alesha, and also mindful of other children who might be experiencing, have had lives every day of their life is a frightening, terrifying thing. Okay, so in our 10 minutes that we've got left, Sam, we're going to talk about a wee angel far away.
That's my cue. I completely lost it because you told me to go away. Right, okay. So this one, it's a pretty cool story. We all know of the horrific stories from America of like Sandy Hook and Columbine, all that kind of stuff. These horrific school shootings that happen over there. But there's another one here that could have happened before all of those famous ones. And on the 11th of September, 1991. So we're talking basically 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, right?
Oh, oh God.
Yeah, 1991. It's 2021 right now.
30 years ago. Oh my I thought 1970 was 30 years ago.
I know. Is that terrifying? And whenever I do 30 years ago, I do it for 2010 in my head. I don't know why.
Yeah, because it's an even number.
Yeah. That's like the year, and it was like, but there were 11 years after that point now, which is terrifying. Anyway, on to the story. This one's called "The Teen Who Saved His South Dakota School from a Columbine-like Tragedy." Before Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, and Columbine, there almost could have been Rapid City, had it not been for the swift acts of senior Chris Eriks. Remember that name, Chris Eriks, hero. On September the 11th, 1991, 17-year-old Ryan Harris entered Stevens High School in Rapid City, SD, South Dakota, maybe, and walked into a math class, demanded that the teacher leave, and held 22 of his fellow students, including Eriks, hostage with a 12-gauge sawed-off shotgun. Wow. For 4 hours, the students cowered while the young man blared demands for pizza, cigarettes, $1 million, and a helicopter getaway over the public address system. So you know that
those are the demands of a teenager. I love it.
And the little button you go, attention, students. This guy's telling me, I go, give me some pizza and ciggies and $100 million and a bloody
million pounds.
Chopper. That's hilarious. It's not hilarious, but it's also kind of hilarious because we know the story ended. Helicopter getaway over the public address system, accenting each order by firing his weapon into the classroom. So not at students, but into the classroom. He shot at the chalkboard, the ceiling, and the window, making it clear that he had plenty of ammo and that he would leave no survivors. But then, for one moment, Harris put his gun down, and Eriks lunged for it. Harris, realizing his mistake, jumped at the shotgun too, and the pair struggled for control. Eriks, however, won the tug of war, and the gunman was overpowered. Quote, "To this day, I am so proud of Chris Eriks for having the courage to do what he did to bring the situation to a close," said the police captain Christopher Grant, told the Rapid City Journal in 2011, which is 10 years ago. That's horrific, isn't it? It was 20 years after the incident. So even 20 years after, this police captain is still in awe of the bravery of this guy. So yeah, that's the story. It's quite an impressive one. To be held at gunpoint for 4 hours, that'll mess with you. That's fucked up. And then to remain calm and wait for that moment of him putting it down and like dropping his guard for 4 hours. That's impressive. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing is that it's a couple of things there. Is that you know, when you've initially got the shock of the event, you know, because there's a lot of adrenaline going around. You know, this guy's clearly a loose cannon, and he's firing away. So, you know, the levels of anxiety are fight, flight is way up there. So, you know, most of the class will be in fear. They'll be in freeze kind of place of, or flight, wanting to get the heck out of there. And then over time, over 4 hours, he's probably not, the guy with the gun is probably not shooting about all over the place. There will have been this calming down.
Yeah.
When you can start to connect everything up again. And it might be that there's been a conversation or whatever, but this guy has waited for his moment. Now, would you have done that? Would you have taken this guy on?
No idea, because I'm in the situation. I like to think I would have, but like he also had to have been like, this guy had to have been situated well as well, because like it's all about timing. I imagine he wouldn't have let anyone move around in that 4 hours, because you know he would have been like, "Why are you moving?" But he must have been situated right at the front of the classroom, like next to him, to make that, because he wouldn't have ran from the back of the room, like, you know, running down to try and get this shotgun. So he must have been like really close, because he would have just grabbed it and shot him. So he must have been pretty close. So I think if the situation is like, if you're situated there and you're like, I can probably stop this because I'm like right there, I'm just waiting for it, then you probably got to take it upon yourself to do it. You know what I mean? Because if it's 4 hours, what are they doing? Did they get the police involved?
Well, the thing is, right? There's no way that lad was going to kill those kids. I don't think, because
it's one of those. He's not really a skilled shooter, is he?
No,
or just a dick.
Yeah, and he was firing in the air. He was probably on something, and he wasn't really thinking.
Skilled shooters walk into schools and shoot people.
They just shoot you. That's it. And then they turn the gun on themselves, or they get the police to shoot them. But yeah, so I don't think there was any way he intended to shoot, which is probably why that lad thought he could overpower him.
Yeah, exactly.
But the gun could have gone off as well, or he might not have overpowered him and the shooter might have panicked and shot somebody or even him. So it was a massive risk to take. I think that it was a desperate work, a desperate move. And I think it's one of these things, and I've seen it with, when what happened in the US recently when they sort of stormed the Capitol and things, is that this whole thing about right to bear arms doesn't necessarily mean you should. And just seeing people wandering around with like AK-47s, really kind of not a handgun for protection because that's actually my right. No, I'm going to arm myself to the teeth with the biggest badass looking guns I can get my hands on and wield them around. And it's like, and of course, if he didn't have a gun, he couldn't have done what he did, but yeah, that was a brilliant act of instinctive, impulsive behavior on behalf of the lad that took him down, Eric, and overpowered him. So well done him. And it's one of these things where the policeman said, in these sort of situations, people don't tend to be a hero, they just kind of sit back and hope someone's going to save them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But like, they must have had it's a classroom, right? So there's windows in every classroom in the world, isn't there? So the police must have had a sniper on them or something, through the window. Just like, I've got eyes on this guy, and if he does anything, like threatens to shoot them, I'll just take him out. Because like in 4 hours, they must have contacted the police. They must have been negotiating or trying to get him his demands. They must have been like on Domino's, like, give me a damn pizza right now. You know what I mean? Like on the phone, they're like. But I also think that I would have gone with that. Like, if it depends on the situation. You asked me if I would have done that. I probably would have gone for the guy rather than the gun. Because if I could like rugby tackle the guy to the floor, then I'd imagine if my classmates seen that, they would all rush and help me, and one of them would grab the gun. Do you know what I mean? And stop it. Whereas if I grab the gun and they're doing that thing, the movies are both hanging on and they've got, it's going all over the place. Like, that could have shot anyone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I probably would have gone for the guy, but it depends on if he was on the other side of the desk and he was there and he put the gun down. If he went for the gun, I get that. But, it depends on the situation and what was happening. But if he was just next to him and he put the gun down, I would have gone for the guy, because I just feel like his legs, just like take his legs from him, just make him fall on the floor and just pin him or something. Because I think going for the gun, and when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, he went for him. Good idea. That's what I would have done. Then I was like, wait, he went for the gun? Like, and I was like, oh geez.
That's a good point, actually.
But,
if he was away from the gun, you'd have maybe tried to get him, and then hope that one of your mates would have grabbed the gun or at least taken it away.
Yeah. The thing in that if like you might have been you said everyone's waiting for someone to do something. Like, if they waited 4 hours and someone in your class has done something, everyone in the class is going to go right out, and that's our cue. Because they're all on edge, and you might think, oh no, there's no evidence of that, but I'm certain they probably would have, the people in that situation. But like, if someone made a move, they would have just been like, right, gun. Do you know what I mean? And helped. But yeah, I don't know. It's a great story. It's a really good story. I think it's interesting, inspiring, and
it very much so. And also, it's one of these things how, I don't know, films can either be, you think they always ask for a helicopter. In films, he's obviously got that from. They always ask for $1 million and they ask for a helicopter. So I'll make that my list of demands. But also, likewise, the hero in the story may have also watched a film and seen. Do you know what I mean? So actually,
he went for the gun, and then they just wrestled for the gun rather than just like taking the threat out, which is actually the trigger man. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. It was a good story though, and we're not blaming him or being like, you could have done this better, but like, no,
we're not at all.
But that guy would be like. That guy will be in his 40s now. Do you know what I mean?
Who, the guy that saved the day?
Both of them, yeah. 1981, 30 years ago. So in high school.
The shooter had went to jail or anything. Did they say that?
He must have done, surely, for a little bit. Not for very long, because he didn't kill anyone, but I imagine it must have been for long enough. Anyway, we're coming to an end. We've got about 40 seconds left. That was fun. Okay. Good discussion today. Yeah. Good to cover something local. I know it was a horrific topic, but we will try and get more local things in because we feel we should talk about them. I'll try and find a local hero for next week as well. I think something that
local hero, nice.
Britain. Well, I say local, not like down the road, but something that is British, something like that. It'd be quite cool.
Yeah. And if you've got any, can you put them in the comments?
Yeah, please do. Or just message us or something.
Get suggestions. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much. That's us at the end of our show. We thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your contributions, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
See you later. Bye.